By the way, how do you like the annex to the Bat Cave? And gentlemen, I will ask you, are you ready to proceed with your opening statements?
Yes, Judge. Yes, Your Honor.
You may begin.
Good afternoon, jurors.
Keep your voice up, please, very loud.
Good afternoon, jurors. All right. I will try to keep my voice up. We've got a lot of microphones around here. I'm not worried about anybody else hearing me, but you guys hearing me. Mr. Cataldo did a lot of speaking, and I'm going to talk to you now about what I think our case will be. And we start on July 24th, 2014, and I'm going to start at a particular point. Between 6:20 and 6:30 in the evening, just south of the Armada area, on the Macomb Orchard Trail, still in Armada, April, a 14-year-old girl, April Millsap, was walking her dog. About a month before she had finished 8th grade, she was going into the 9th grade. She went out for a walk by herself with her dog Penny. You're going to see pictures of Penny. And in that time frame, she is seen with a man on a motorcycle. And the motorcycle will be described for you. You're going to hear that it's an enduro type of motorcycle, a term some of you may or may not be familiar with. An enduro motorcycle is an on-road, off-road motorcycle. It looks sort of like an off-road bike, but it's going to have a headlight in the front and it's street legal. There'll be a plate on the back of it. Knobby tires, but not huge knobby tires. Do we know it's April? You're going to hear from Mr. Reschke, one of our witnesses, who's going to tell you that was April Millsap. I know her. My daughter's friends with her. He's on the trail that day as well, right in the time frame I told you. And he's with his daughters taking a bike ride. One day like July 9th, about 70, 75 degrees. And he sees her, and he sees her with a man. There are more people on that trail right in that same time frame. Two of those people are Doug and Mary Stein. They go through within minutes, and they see April Millsap, and they see her with a man with a motorcycle. Similarly described motorcycle. And mind you, this is not a path where people ride motorcycles on. This is a walking path, rollerblading path, bicycling path. So when people see a motorcycle, heads cocked. And you're going to hear more witnesses talk about that, and I'll talk about that later. But Mrs. Stein is going to tell you the man with the motorcycle is the defendant. Not maybe the defendant, not might be the defendant. It's James VanCallis. And the interaction between the two of them was not something like walking into a Myers a couple of weeks ago where you paid no attention to the greeter. There was something that happened as she went through that she paid attention. They parted ways, and she said hi to the young girl. And she tried then to acknowledge the man by the motorcycle. She did not get an acknowledgement back. She kept riding with her husband. And that interaction was enough for them to keep talking about it as they went down the trail. Something about that didn't look right. Riding down with your spouse, it's not just somebody else on the trail. Something didn't look right. Husband and wife are talking about it. Within minutes. One other thing. Listen to see if Doug Stein tells you if he ever heard that motorcycle start up after they passed him. He didn't. Within minutes, April is assaulted. April is taken into the woods just north of the trail. and April's murder. The man sitting in that seat is the one who did it. We talked a lot in board I didn't talk a lot, Mr. Cataldo did, but we have to prove certain things to you. And the things we have to prove to you are elements of certain crimes. And I know people were taking notes, I know the judge is handing these things out, but I want to talk about them a little bit now. Mind you, the instructions you get from the judge are the law. And I'm going to put some elements up, and I'm going to try and talk about them in terms of what happened. Because most of this trial is going to focus on who did it. But some of what happened becomes important. And ultimately, we have to prove those elements to you beyond a reasonable doubt. So I'm going to put these up and I'm going to talk about them. We have a count of first-degree premeditated murder. These are the actual crimes. These are the things we have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant caused the death of April Dawn Millsap. That is, that April Dawn Millsap died as a result of blunt head trauma and asphyxia due to neck compression. You've heard that already. You heard it probably last week. This is so sterile in terms of what happened to her. April's head and neck, she was stalked to death. She was literally beat and stalked to death. So blunt head trauma and asphyxia due to neck compression is a real nice way of saying she got stalked to death. Second, the defendant intended to kill April Dawn Millsap. Whoever did this to April, you're going to have, the standard of proof in this case is beyond a reasonable doubt. You're going to have no doubt. Not beyond a reasonable doubt, no doubt, that whoever did this to her intended to kill her. She was stomped on this side of the face, on her jaw, on this side of her face, on her neck, up here, here in her neck. You're going to see footprints, and you're going to see some pictures that are disturbing. And we talked about it, and it's part of the case, and we're all grown up. You're going to see pictures of her at the scene where she doesn't have any clothes on, and she's a girl, she's a young kid. You need to see those pictures, and that's the only reason we show them to you, to help you understand the evidence. I'm not showing them to you to shock you or upset you or anything else, but you're going to have to see those pictures. The defendant intended to kill April Dawn Millsap. Third, the intent to kill was premeditated. That is, thought out beforehand. Now, April was on the trail walking her dog and ended up off the trail in the woods, secluded in brush about 20 to 30 feet off the trail, beaten to death. There's another very significant injury to April. There's stomp marks and footprints you're going to see all over her face and neck and jaw. You're going to see a massive injury to the side of her face, too. Something else caused a significant injury. Dr. Pietrangelo, the medical examiner, is going to talk to you about this blunt force that would have caused this, something different than footprints. Fourth, the killing was deliberate, meaning the defendant considered the pros and cons of the killing. There must have been real and substantial reflection for long enough to give a reasonable person a chance to think twice. Well, you're going to see evidence in this case about the time that whoever did this was in the woods doing this. You don't often get that in the case. We don't often get that in the case. In this case, we have it. We have evidence of how long it took place. Now I'll explain that to you. So that's first-degree premeditated murder. The law does not say how much time is needed. That was something we talked about. Is it enough time to have your hands around someone's throat and see them dying right in front of you and thinking about it and you could let go? I submit it is. But it's not that difficult in this case. It's not one footprint on the neck. It's not one side of the face. It's all over her, head and neck. fact, you're going to see a picture of her. You'll see where the constellation, the main part of the injuries are. It's all really from the neck up. You might see some grab marks on arms or bruises or something on her knees and shins and legs. This wasn't just an assault where, oops, I hit her one time too much. This is a murder. This is an intentional, thought out, planned out multiple times in the head and neck. Fifth, the killing was not justified, excused, or done under circumstances that reduce it to a lesser crime. I don't think that's something we're going to be thinking about in this case. Count 2, felony murder. We have to prove that April Millsap died as a result of these injuries. The defendant had one of these three states of mind. He intended to kill, intended to do great bodily harm, or knowingly create a very high risk of death or great bodily harm, knowing the actions would result in death. We've talked about the nature of the assault. There's going to be no doubt about that. Third, when he did the act to cause the death, the defendant was committing or attempting to commit the crime of larceny or kidnapping. Larceny. You've heard the term larceny before. Here's what it is legally. It's going to be more drawn out in your instructions, but this is what it is. A larceny is the taking and movement of someone else's property or money without consent with the intent to permanently deprive. And it doesn't matter if the person keeps the property. It doesn't matter if they get away 10 miles away and they've kept the property. So where does the larceny come in? April had a cell phone with her, and April had a backpack with her. April had a leash with her. April's backpack was removed from the scene by the person who killed her. It was taken. April's phone was taken from her and removed from the scene and dumped nearby. And we're going to talk about that. Whoever did this, you will have no doubt, took her property. Absolutely. She didn't do it. Someone else took it from her and dumped it. So it's this. It's larceny or kidnapping during the commission of a murder. The crime of kidnapping, and this is going to get redundant because you're going to see it in the actual kidnapping instruction too, because we're separately charging that he did a kidnapping. We have to prove that he restrained another person, interfered with their liberty without the person's consent. It doesn't have to exist for any particular length of time. It may be related or incidental to the commission of other criminal acts. By doing so, the defendant must have intended to engage in criminal sexual penetration or criminal sexual contact with April Dawn Millsap. When April was found in the woods north of the trail, her clothes and her upper half were taken off her. Her bra, her undergarment, was literally ripped from her. It wasn't taken off or removed, it was ripped off her. Her shorts and her underwear were pulled down around her ankles. Her shoes were pulled off. And it's not a stretch. I'm not asking you to speculate. There's a reason someone did that. They didn't need to pull her clothes off her, to pull her bra off, to pull her shirt off, to pull her underwear off, to pull her shorts off, to pull her shoes off, in order to stomp on her neck or hit her in the head with something. Fourth, the killing was not justified or excused or done under circumstances that reduce it. Kidnapping, we just went through that. I'm gonna move through it. We're charging that a separate crime was committed, kidnapping. So we've got 3 counts so far. We've talked about first-degree premeditated murder. We've talked about felony murder. 2 separate counts. We're talking about kidnapping as a separate count. And the last count is assault with intent to commit criminal sexual conduct involving penetration. What do we have to prove? The defendant either attempted to commit a battery on April Dawn Millsap or did an act that would cause a reasonable person to fear or apprehend immediate battery. She was battered. Sorry, my clicking. Second, the defendant intended to injure April Millsap or make her fear battery. She was injured. Third, the defendant had the ability to commit the battery. We give you all of this because there might be other cases where sometimes this is appropriate, appeared to have the ability. The person had the ability, they actually did it in this case. Fourth, when the defendant assaulted her, he intended to commit a sexual act involving criminal sexual penetration. Must have intended some actual entry into one person's genital opening or anal opening or mouth with another person's penis, finger, tongue, or object. That's why she was stripped naked and her clothes literally ripped off her body. It is not required that the defendant actually began to commit the act. In this case, he did. He pulled her clothes off. To prove the charge, the prosecutor must prove the defendant made an attempt or a threat while intending to commit the act. An actual touching or penetration is not required. To prove the charge, the prosecutor must prove the defendant committed the assault and intended to commit sexual penetration. So, one of the things you heard about is DNA or fingerprints. This is not, you're going to hear from a DNA, maybe more than one actually, expert from the state police who talks about DNA. We're going to hear about somebody who looked for fingerprints. We don't have fingerprints in this case or DNA in this case. We looked for it. I say we, I mean the royal we. The police looked for it. The FBI looked for it. The state police looked for it. The sheriff department looked for it. The Armada police department looked for it. We don't have it. To prove the charge, the prosecutor must prove the defendant committed the assault and committed criminal sexual penetration. Actual touching or penetration is not required. All right. I'm going to show that later. So we're flipping it on and off. We're going to hear from a lot of witnesses in this case, like 30-some witnesses probably. And I want to take you through at least a little more of the detail of the case and what happened to lead us to this point. That night, the Sadages, Mr. and Mrs. Sadage, this is July 24th, 2014. They're out on the trail at about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and she's on his rollerblades, he's on his bike, and they're out going down the trail like a number of other people are. When they are moving westbound to eastbound, I think I got my directions correct. At any rate, they pass the area where April is found. The first time they pass by, April's dog, Penny, comes bounding out of the woods, barking. And they are kind of like, whoa, they weren't expecting a dog to come out of there. And Mr. Sadaj kind of, I guess, pulled in behind her to kind of let her go because she's on rollerblades. And they kind of made their way through, and they both made note of it, and they continued on, and they did their ride and their rollerblade. Well, they turned around at a certain point, and they were coming back through that area. And they were both cognizant that a dog had run out of the woods at that area. When they came back, they heard the same dog. They heard a dog in that same area, I should say. And that time, they stopped. And Mr. Sadaj said, you know what, we're on rollerblades, and you got my bike. I'm going to go see what, if anything's going on here. The trail there is heavily wooded. One of the witnesses described it as like a tunnel of trees. And he gets off his bike and he goes looking, and he looks in. At first, one of the things he described was he thought it might have been a mannequin. But he looked a little further, and the trail is at this level, and it drops off about 2 or 3 feet down into the woods. There's like a ditch, and then it kind of rises a little bit back into the woods. And there's a lot of brush. Well, he gets down and he looks and he realizes this is not a mannequin. And he calls out, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? Are you okay? He doesn't hear anything, and I think, frankly, he's starting to realize what he's seeing. He comes out of the woods pretty quick. His wife starts coming towards him. He's like, hold up. We need to go find a phone. now. We got to go call somebody. They don't have their cell phones with them. So this is about 8:20 at night now, and they make a phone call. They call 911 on somebody else's phone and call the police. If you got a body in Cold Orchard Trail in Armada, just north of the trail, south of this particular neighborhood. And the police come out, the Armada police show up, the state police show up, fire department / EMS personnel show up, state police, FBI. I mean, when they realize they've got someone found murdered on this trail, it was all hands pretty darn quick. Because you got a big problem here. Deceased child beat to death, and we don't know who did it. Nobody standing right by her. And there's not a movie camera filming every part of the woods to tell us who did it. So they've got to figure out. Wow. They're out there for hours. The medical examiner's office, another group that comes out. The medical examiner herself comes out. They're taking pictures, they're documenting the scene. It's as I described to you. It's terrible. And they're trying to do what they can, at least document the scene. It's getting darker out there till like 2, 3 in the morning. And one of the things they do is try to cordon off the area, but circumstances start coming together. Because there's a mom whose daughter hasn't come home all night. And she has enlisted the help of her daughter's boyfriend, his friend, and they're looking for her, and they can't find her. And they're realizing there's a bunch of police lights on the trail and ambulances and what the heck is going on. So at a certain point, they call the police. And they go to the Armada Police Department, and they give a description of her clothing, and they give a description of her, and they're realizing we might have something here. So they start talking to her about what happened that night, and they're gathering information from Mrs. Millsap. She's going to be our first witness. And they want to know who her boyfriend is. They start gathering information from him. They're interviewing people that night and over past the midnight hour into the next morning. And they start getting tips in that next day. And the tips start coming in, and the tips start coming in. And more tips are coming. People are upset about this. I think there were hundreds and hundreds, many hundreds, 900 to 1,000 tips that came in on this case. And the police started working on those tips right away. One of the early tips, some of you said you heard something about the case. It doesn't matter now, you're all here listening to this, but I'm going to tell you, one of the early tips was there might be a gray or white van that was in the area. Hey, anybody got information on a gray or white van, we want to know about it. That was one of the early tips. The next day after the homicide. So police start looking into that. Well, later in the day, that next day, Mr. Westby comes in, and he tells them, hey, I think I might know something, I might have seen something. There was a guy with April, and he had this blue and white Enduro style motorcycle, and this is about the time I saw her. That's important. So they put out the motorcycle. They put out the motorcycle to their task force looking. And later that day, as a matter of fact, Trooper Peckman, who you're going to hear in this case, this is the day after the murder, is driving down a street near Armada, and he sees a motorcycle that matches that description. Takes a picture of it, documents where it is, goes and gets a couple of more troopers. They go back to that location, and the motorcycle's gone, but they figure out who that motorcycle belonged to. It belonged to the defendant. They go to the defendant's house. What were you wearing? What were you doing? Very general questions, late in the evening after the murder. They get some general information. They see the helmet he says he's wearing. They take a picture. They see the motorcycle. What shoes were you wearing? Because now they're realizing shoes are going to play a part in this case. He shows them some K-Swiss shoes. Okay. Where were you? Well, I went into Armada, I went through there, I stopped at the Marathon Station. Marathon Station is within blocks of the murder. Whose house did you go to later? Where'd you go? I went to my brother's house, down in VanCallis. Oh, okay, who's that? How do we get a hold of them? So they get a hold of down in VanCallis. What time did your brother get here? He got here 6:25, 6:30. Okay. But there were other people over there that night. And so they started asking the other people, hey, what time did Jim VanCallis get there? Not 6:25. About 7, maybe a little. So they go back and talk to his brother. You know, we talked to your boss, because they got his boss's name and phone number too, Mr. Billy Allen, because they know the guy. What time did you get home? What time did your brother get here? Oh, he got here closer to 7, probably about 7, maybe a little after 7. Now that 6:25 to 6:30 time frame is front and center in this case. Because the day after the murder, the police found April's phone. They found her iPhone. They found her iPhone along Omo Road, relatively close. You'll see it on the map. You're going to see a whole bunch of map pictures. You're going to see a whole bunch of people pointing to it. I got a trail picture up here right as one. They found her phone. And the police tried, the state police tried, they searched through her phone. They're looking for information about texts, phone calls, who did what, when, where, and then they gathered some information. Eventually, though, they turned that phone over to the FBI. And Special Agent Zenst and his partner found on that phone a fitness app. And the fitness app on April's phone, they found she had activated at the start of her walk that day. Now this is weeks after. The police find out weeks after the fact that she had her fitness app working. They have been working and tallying, and they're not going to, they're knocking tips off. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I'm not going to fill that whole board up, but I can't tell you how many tips they're knocking off. So you're going to hear in this case a narrative about our investigation and our case. But Chief Smith's going to talk about it. There's, all the while, James VanCallis, all the while he's being investigated, and there's some officers investigating James VanCallis, there's officers out there, troopers, FBI agents, and they're not stopping. There's a lot going on. There's no rush to judgment in this case. It makes no sense to do that. There's a 14-year-old girl killed. So they're knocking off tips, and they're also looking and they're continuing to investigate Mr. VanCallis. So they take her phone, and the FBI agent finds that they can use the data from her sport tracker that day, her fitness app that day, and they were able to recreate her travels, her time, when she left her house, and where she went. You're going to see an animation, and you're going to see a static image of what they found and how they verified what they found. He's going to testify. The police now know when she left, where she left, and you know what else? They know when she went into the woods. They know because you can look right at the GPS and you can see where and when for about 15 minutes. That phone was right in that area. And then you're going to see something that's very telling as well, because what happened helps us know who did it. You will see when she leaves her house, that phone is moving at a walking pace with her dog. And it goes down the trail. She goes down the trail to a certain point. She turns around and she's making her way back at a walking pace. Then there's this, I'm going to describe it to you as chaos, because I think you're going to see chaotic activity in that animation about where her phone was and what was happening. Then you're going to see something that is mechanized. You're going to see much increased speed, much faster than foot speed, consistent speeds, you're going to see that taken out of there by something that's motorized. You're going to see it. And you'll also see that the person who took her phone deviated off the path along the wood line, near the granary, near the path, and the police have been looking for her backpack. Well, that's one of the things I told you was taken from her. They haven't found it yet. When they got this animation, they went, wow, it looks like her phone went off the path here by this tree line. They sent out a bunch of police officers and sheriff deputies, and they found her backpack based off of that animation. They also found the path back through the neighborhood north of the trail that the person who took her phone went. And it went right past the gentleman's name, Mr. Koss. Mr. Koss, he had a house, and he had a young child, and he had some exterior security video footage of it. Some people have it, some people don't. Well, the animation shows he went right by his house. And Mr. Koss's home video shows a motorcycle going right past his house at the right time. You'll see a picture of the defendant's motorcycle in evidence, and you'll compare it with the piece of evidence gathered from Mr. Koss's video. And we're going to argue to you, you are the deciders of the fact, that they're the same motorcycle. You'll see the pictures and judge for yourself. What else did the police have? The police talked to other people who came forward on the trail that day. One of the people who came forward as a witness named Mr. Buchanan. Mr. Buchanan said, I was on the trail that day, I'm a regular bike rider. He rides pretty fast. He talked about bike riding and different lenses he has for his glasses. And sometimes he's got like a rear view mirror on his helmet. He's a bike rider guy. And that day, he paid particular attention to something because he saw a motorcycle on the trail. And he saw a motorcycle on the trail with a headlight on. And he had a long run-up to that situation. And when he got closer, and he's watching because he does not want, he's going at a clip. He doesn't want that motorcycle pulling out in front of him and causing a problem. So he is watching. And as he's watching the defendant. He'll come in here and tell you what he saw and whether he's certain that was the defendant. And he sees April Millsap nearby walking. And she's walking away from him. That was several minutes before Mr. Reschke and his daughters and Mr. and Mrs. Stein saw them. So you'll see her course of travel. There's no doubt about her course of travel. You know where her phone went. Mr. Buchanan saw him, the defendant, with her on the trail. Mrs. Stein saw him with her on the trail minutes before. Her phone goes out of that area on mechanized transportation. There's no other way to describe what you'll see and judge for yourself. One of the people the police talked to was the defendant's live-in girlfriend, and her name was Crystal Stadler. And she says a few things that are interesting that I want you to listen for. One of the things she says is, when he came home that night, this being the night of the murder, because he came home from his brother's at some point that evening, he was acting a little different. We live together, we have a child together, but we're not really too lovey-dovey. We're not like that. That night, he was like that. And it's a little something. It's a difference in behavior. It's a question. What else does she tell us? She tells us that that night, he was wearing a particular pair of shoes. And it was black and white Jordan Flight the Powers She doesn't call him Flight Apollo. We figured that out in the course of the case. I'll tell you how we figured that out. She describes a pair of black and white Nike shoes, and later when she's shown a picture of Flight Apollo shoes, that's them. On top of that, though, we've located pictures of him wearing those shoes, and you'll see those. So he was wearing those shoes that night. Now remember, he told the officer the night after I was wearing K-Swiss. She says that he was wearing these black and white shoes. Where are the shoes? The police searched his property 2 separate times. The police searched a landfill over 2 days, I believe, looking for shoes. The reason they went to the landfill, about 3 or 4 or 5 days after the murder, there was an extra special pickup of garbage from the VanCallis house, where they had 16 bags of garbage thrown out. You can't find his pair of shoes. They're gone. Those are a pair of shoes he wore regularly. And there were the pair of shoes he was wearing that night. They're gone. Sweatshirt. He was wearing a particular Carhartt sweatshirt. Do we have the sweatshirt? The sweatshirt apparently got thrown out at about the time of the extra garbage pickup. What else? She tells, okay, you've heard basically how she died and what happened to her. One of the places you might find some physical evidence on his clothing is bottom of the feet. You're going to see footprints. You're going to see a little bit of blood, not a lot of blood, but a little bit of blood oozing out of her nose and her mouth in these pictures. She says that night he was cleaning the bottom of his shoes the night he came home, the night of the murder, with hand sanitizer. But the shoes are nowhere to be found. But we identified and figured out what kind of shoes they are. And so we sent a pair of the same size shoes to the State Police Crime Lab, and you'll hear an expert talk about trying to match those shoe impressions up. And we're going to show you the pictures yourself. Because we don't have lab people convict or not convict, we ask jurors to decide guilt or innocence. We're going to show you the pictures and have you judge if the bottom of those shoes matches the marks on her throat and her jaw and her eye. And they do. That's the reason those shoes are gone. Two other things that come to mind right now from his living girlfriend. She says he told her that night, "I messed up." I can't make more of it than that because she said he never said what he messed up about. And at first she thought maybe he cheated on her or something. But that night he says, "I messed up. I need you to stand by me." He does not elaborate. He doesn't say, "Because I killed April Millsap just a little while ago. Oh my God, I can't believe it." He doesn't say that. One of the last things I guess I want to leave you with in terms of an opening statement is this. April, at 6:28 that night, and some of you may already know this, at about 6:28 that night, April sent her boyfriend Austin. By the way, Austin was at the McDonald's at 6:30 on a video drive-through. You'll see that. Her boyfriend. Austin was not there. And Austin was with his friend Alex. It's caught on tape. April sends a text to her boyfriend. I think I almost just got kidnapped. OMFG. That's text speak, and some of you know what it is, but oh my FG. That piece of evidence, in my mind, is her telling what was happening, was about to happen, and what had almost just happened, and what happened about 2 or 3 minutes later. I think at the end of the case, we will prove our case beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant committed all those crimes. I'm going to ask you to consider those pieces. Listen for the pieces. Listen for the evidence. Take whatever notes you think are appropriate, and we will build our case. And we will find the defendant guilty of each of the counts that we charge.
Mr. Sheik, would you like to make your opening at this time?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I really enjoy what I do, and I've been doing it for a couple of decades. I think the only person that enjoys her job more is her honor. She's been a judge a little longer than I've been practicing law. And I'm a realist when it comes to this. One of the first things we just taught in law school that we talked about when you folks came here is a presumption of innocence, you know? And in reality, I don't think it exists 10% of the time, because when people come to you, you know, and some people just tend to think that maybe because they're here, they're charged or something. So I know better than to think that you're going to listen to anything I say in a sense like I'm going to try to convince you. I'm not. All I want you to do, if you would do me this favor, you're going to be here throughout this trial anyway. You're going to have your ears right there, and you're going to be listening. So you may as well just listen. If you don't believe anything I say, that's fine. But please just don't close your mind off. Honor the presumption of innocence and think about the things that I say as well, okay? Now, you saw the prosecutor get up here. Nothing that I'm ever going to say is personal. I work with all of these people for a long time. They're very professional. And part of the reason that this trial is going as smooth as it is because there's been no game playing. It's been very, very professional and courteous on both sides. And I appreciate that. And that's what's facilitating things for me, too. So when I say they, I'm not trying to say in any sense, but obviously we're on opposite sides at this point, okay? Now, what happens? The prosecutor gets up here and tells you that the crime is brutal, it's sad, to a great degree unplanned, and there's no discrepancy about that. What does he tell you? That it's mostly about who. And how much time did he spend on the who? Very little time. Let me tell you a few things. First of all, the word trial, in some language, I think it's Latin, it's supposed to mean the search for the truth. So when you do that, it's not like, you know, Mr. Cataldo, Mr. Daly versus Mr. Azar Shade. It's supposed to be finding the truth. So when it comes to the truth, let me tell you a few things that we're not going to get out to. Let's talk about April 1st. April's 14 years old, lives in the city of Armada with her mom, her stepdad, 2 dogs, and a cat, and is a very happy young lady. This is July 24, 2014. It's a Thursday. She's out of school. She gets up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Her mother will testify to that. And she plays back and forth on the computers. There's one in her bedroom and there's one in the living room. The stepfather, the mother, and April each have their own computers. And they kind of, you know, use them back and forth. So she's spending most of her day on the computer. About 5:30, she's going to go out and walk the dog. They have 2 dogs. It's always April's chore, if you would call it, to walk the dog. Sometimes she walks them both, sometimes she walks one. On this particular day, she walks the black one, which is Border Collie and Lab mixed. The dog's name is Penny. Before she goes out, she changes her clothes 3 times. The mother will testify to that, you know, for whatever it's worth. It's to decide what to wear as she goes to walk this dog. And at 5:30, she leaves her house. And it's very sad and tragic. Whatever happened to her in between that time, we know that at approximately 8:19 or 8:20 is when Mr. Siraj calls 911, Macomb County Sheriff's Deputy, and says, "We think we've seen a body." It's a horrible thing that happened in April, but if those of you who watch TV and stuff, you know, I think from parents' point of view, just having a missing child is just so horrible. At least thank God that it wasn't, you know, a long period of time. I guess maybe I'm trying to, you know, in my mind, think of some comfort for Mrs. Millsap, but within 3 hours there. What they didn't tell you is that at 6:28 and 6:30, well, first of all, at 6:28, she did send that text. She sent a text that said, as you heard, "I'm about to be kidnapped, OMFG." Then, from 6:30 to 6:31, this is 2 minutes, she makes 3 telephone calls to a number, an 810 number. We still don't know to this day who that number is, who that person is. The 3 calls are all to that same number. And she has told her mom that somebody in a black pickup truck has been kind of following her around, and she finds it kind of creepy. This is not stuff that I'm making up. This is not some defense attorney coming up with some sleazy stories to try to get his client off like most people think on TV. These are the truths that you will hear from the victim's mother. And she will tell you that they're not going to deny any of this. So it makes you think a little bit, what was going on? Because some of the things that you're not going to see is, well, first of all, Armada is a small town, as I think we all realize. It's a small village. But they've been very, very professional. The minute that this situation occurred, it's very sad to find a young 14-year-old girl deceased like that, nude, and you don't know what happened to her. They called for the FBI, they called from the Macomb County Sheriff's Office, I think the marshals, and the Armada Police Department. So this is not a case of Mayberry, and we don't have anything because nobody knew how to look for it or nobody didn't look for it. We had a case here, we had right from the beginning, we had the FBI, we had the Macomb County Sheriff's Department, we had the Armada Police Department, and I think the federal marshals. Drones were used to go all over the area. If you remember any of this, some of the TV coverage, cars were stopped every along the way. You heard Mr. Daly talk about 1,000 tips. And that's true. All those tips came in. You know what? How many of them had to do with Mr. VanCallis? Zero. Zero. Not one had to do with this child. Now, start the investigation and so forth and go forward. As he indicated to you, there was a blunt force trauma to, I believe, the left side of April's head. All along, initially, if you remember from some of the press coverage you may or may not have seen, it was thought that there was a motorcycle helmet. I don't know if any of you remember hearing that or not, some of the stories that were out there. Before any analysis is done on the helmet, before any results are back, Mr. VanCallis is charged. There are about 20 lab tests that are done. And I don't want to be vulgar, but they go as far as taking his pubic hair, even his rectal hair, fingernails, clippings, every single thing from him, as they did with April, and they sent them out to see if there's any kind of match, any kind of DNA, any kind of... All of those reports, each and every one of them comes back absolutely zero. There is nothing. So this is not a case where there is nothing because nobody looked, nobody collected, nobody knew how to look, or nobody knew how to collect or analyze. All of that was done with, I dare say, the top echelon that you could get of everybody working together in that regard. Now, what happens? Let's talk about Mr. VanCallis. He's at his house. He lives there with his mom and dad and family, and Crystal, his girlfriend, and they have 2 kids. They have a child together, and she has a child, from a different relationship. And there's at least 5 dogs that live at that house. They live on a big farm time area. I think there's pigs there, horses, other things like that. And that's where they live. Now, he leaves his house 5:30-ish, by all accounts. Leaves the house, is going to take a toothbrush charger type thing to his brother. That's his brother's that he'd been looking for a while. Halfway or a little bit after he's gone, he realizes he forgot it, comes back to the house, gets it, and goes back. He's calling his brother, he can't get a hold of his brother. Goes by Armada, goes by some friend's house, sees that the friend is not there. He doesn't get along with the friend's wife. Can you hear this testimony? That's James Muse. He'll tell you that for some reason, his wife and Mr. Grace, he sees that the guy's not there, so he doesn't stay. So then he leaves. Then he knows that his brother, usually after work, because he works in Sterling Heights and lives out this way, goes usually to the Tim Hortons out in Romeo. He goes out to the Tim Hortons in Romeo, doesn't see his brother's car or anything like that, stays there, makes a phone call or 2, and then he heads back Georgetown and back to his brother's house eventually. He's thinking that maybe his brother would do. When he gets to his brother's house, you've heard the prosecution say all this about, oh, they couldn't exactly decide, somebody's saying, oh, okay, 6:30, somebody's saying 7:15. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, it is what it is. These people all like to smoke weed, they like to get high. And that's what they're all doing. And you will see that, and you'll hear that from the testimony, because one of the witnesses, a young lady by the name of Samantha, originally said that she went over Donnie's house for the specific purpose of just giving him back some money from her loan or something. And police officers are pretty good at, kind of thinking that through. I don't think anybody's going Thursday afternoon off to, to pay back a loan and stuff. One talked about it that she admits. She went there and she sold $180 to $200, something like that, worth of marijuana to Mr. VanCallis' brother, and she sold some marijuana to Mr. VanCallis. Smoked it. Mr. VanCallis' brother lived in a 1-bedroom house, in a house with 1 bathroom, And there are at least 4 or 5 people there. His girlfriend's brother, his friend, Donald VanCallis, which is James' brother, and then of course James. And these 2 other young ladies that come and go. One is from New York, one is that Samantha lady that I talked about. They're all there just smoking weed and drinking and just partying and stuff like that. So they will tell you, he never once goes to the bathroom, he never goes out of sight, he's not nervous, he's not doing anything unusual. And the time frame is right on 7:15, whatever. This is not important. It's not like somebody's coming to punch in at a set time. These are a bunch of people who just decided that they're going to chill after work. So there's no exact time to have to go punch in to chill, you know? So they're sitting there smoking weed and stuff. The only thing that he's nervous about, and Samantha will, if she so remembers it, comes and testifies to that, would indicate a long time ago he'd come over to her house about 1 in the morning and it almost had a deer and it scared the heck out of him. So the only thing that Mr. VanCallis would say was, you know, I'm going to get home before dark because I'm going to be on this bike and hit a deer or something. I'm not from that area, but I'm talking to other people, I realize that that's a very normal concern that people may have of that sense. After he's done, he comes home. Now what does he do? He's got to walk through the yard to come into the house. There's 5 dogs, remember, they're outside. His dog poo on his shoes. He takes his shoes off in front of Crystal. He's cleaning them. And I can see where that would seem suspicious or crazy to somebody. It certainly seemed awful suspicious to me until I found out the details, until I went out to the house, saw the dogs, saw the situation. And basically, he sees the helicopters and everything all over. Like I told you, they were all out there the first night. Seriously, as well they should be looking for anything to do with April. But this time they have her body, they don't have her backpack, they don't have her cell phone or anything like that. So the helicopters and stuff are out there. He's engaged in marijuana growth himself. He's thinking he's got, got her in trouble, got everybody at the house, because he's thinking that's probably what's going on. He's trying to figure out what's going on in everything. This is a lot of activity for our guys. So he has to just stick by him. And I noticed Bailey, to his credit, didn't sit there trying to say somehow that meant he did something to April. But when you put things in perspective, that's what they're trying to get you to convict Mr. VanCallis. Now, what happens? April's body is taken down to the medical examiner's office, and there it goes back in Elizabeth. They put bags on her hands and everything to make sure that everything's preserved and any kind of evidence and everything. Her top had been pulled up. She had a bra, pink bra, and it was either cut or ripped in the middle where the cups are apart, and the shorts are pulled down and the shoes are off. Not one tiny bit of even touch DNA, if you've ever heard of it, just by touching, we need DNA histidines, just by touching. So if somebody's pulling their clothes off or anything like that, absolutely no DNA of any type. So their whole thing about, he was sexually aroused and wanted to be with her and couldn't work out, and that whole charge about assault and intent to rape is pure speculation. It's horrible. Whoever did this to this young girl, probably had something like that in mind, or it could have stays in that. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would you have to take the shoes off? If you're going to sit there and you're going to brutally rape somebody, and you're going to rape them at about 6:37 in the evening in the summertime in July in the state of Michigan at a trail where people are walking, jogging, rollerblading, and all that kind of stuff, I don't think you're going to take off anything more than what you need to. If you're going to pull off the shirt, if you're going to pull down the pants, if you're going to cut the bra, why would you take the shoes off and stuff? I mean, we don't know. We're not here to explain anything. We can't explain any of that stuff. But other than the fact of how she was dressed, this is my point, there's no semen, there's no hair, there's no pubic hair, there's zero on her body at all. And there's not a lot of blood around. You see that from the scenes too. Because they can't have their cake and eat it too. They told you repeatedly that this is a 15-minute attack where somebody's stomping on her and hitting her and stuff with such force that it's causing asphyxia and causing head trauma and causing wounds to be left and then causing pressures from the shoe to be on the body, but yet there's no blood anywhere. Let's go back to the shoes for a second. I know I'm kind of hopping all along, but I had in my mind what I was going to say, and then of course I had to take into consideration some of the things that Mr. Bailey said, so forgive me if I'm kind of hopping back and out. We go back to these shoes. So what does Crystal do? She's right there when he gives the shoes to the place. Take my shoes, take my clothes, he gives them everything. Take my bike, helmet, says Raiders across it in big white letters. It's a black helmet. Gives them everything they take. Another interview goes, another interview goes. Finally, these are some things I didn't find out myself till I got involved in the case. I'm finally looking at it, Crystal sees this, or the cycle listen for the CD. or for interview. I mean, by her third or fourth interview, 4 or 5 hours into it, they're talking to her, they just plain old say to her, Crystal, who's going to watch your kids? She says, what are you talking about, you know? And they said, well, because you're going to prison, because you had to know, because you're living there with James for 9 years, you've been in a relationship, and you had to know he's growing marijuana and stuff. And so, you're going to jail, we just need to know you. And all of a sudden, she freaks out like anybody would about her kids. And that's when she comes up with this cockamamie story. She tells them about the washing of the shoes, which is nothing nefarious when you put it in perspective. Now, all of a sudden, she's trying to say that he gave you different shoes than he did. Now, I know at that point, it sounds like he said, she said. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, when she went to the preliminary examination, and I'm going to ask her about this when she's here, which was on December 15 and 16 of 2014. I asked her about that, about her evolving story, and about the fact that she had said that she would frame Mr. VanCallis with his shoes. So she comes up here and denies it. We'll play the transcript for you. But if you ask her, that, I mean, it's just bizarre. There's a lot of bizarre things that happen that in and of themselves, I can see where they have a lot of cause and concern to go forward and to follow this case. That makes perfect sense. In my humble opinion, I think if they'd have waited till the lab results and the helmet results came back before charging Mr. VanCallis, we wouldn't be here at all. But if you go back in the jury room and you add up all the number of years that you've all been in this earth, not even 1% of the time has the government seriously admitted that they're wrong about anything. It's always something, whether it's water and flame or whatever it is, it's just neat. Whatever it is, it's just never, and again, I'm not knocking them. But my point is that I think that kind of got into this where it kind of got the ball spinning. Now let's talk about the 16 bags of trash. These folks live out in girls or Wales? Girls. They live out in girls. It's very common there to call if you want trash pickup if you want to have trash more than 10. 10 bags. Mr. VanCallis is founder called. They have all this information. There's nothing nefarious about that. It might seem strange if you live in Clinton Township or if you live in downtown Detroit or somewhere else, and why are you calling for a pickup? Look, 7 or 8 people live in this house, 5 dogs, pigs and everything. They have a lot of garbage and stuff that gets together, and this is not uncommon. And if they want to, they're free to call in anybody from the dump site and tell you, yeah, this is not only normal, this is what happens all the time. So again, to take that and try to make it sound like, oh my God, all these little tiny pieces, try to make it sound like something suspicious must have happened because they're saying this incident occurs with April, and I'm actually not even sure the day of the pickup, it's just a few days later. So try to tie that in with the dogs, with everything else. But what else do? They go out to the dump site, as indicated, and they go through it. When we were picking the jury, we asked you folks if you watch TV and if you watch different shows and so forth like that. You know? And if you watch any of those shows, most of the time, they're very, very good at finding stuff. Okay, and I have no idea, you know, how good they are. They know what sector or something comes and stuff. For them to say, now, okay, well, we went out there and it was gone. I mean, it wasn't there. There was nothing there. I don't know what they're talking about clothes and so forth like that. K-part jacket and the shoes, their supposition, there's nothing to back that up. Now, let's talk about these witnesses. Ladies and gentlemen, if you remember, we spent a lot of time talking about eyewitnesses. So many people, including the 2 police officers that I remember specifically, one in this seat and one in that seat, both had indicated on their own volition that when it comes to evidence, they found eyewitness testimony to be the least reliable. This is from their experience as law enforcement officers. So why? Because people want to believe, they want to help the young girl that's deceased and so forth like that. And in light of that, and there's other factors that come into play. Somebody could be doing it just for the press, just to get publicity or something. I hope not, but I'm not saying any of these people are. But let's go back and talk about that, okay? You heard Mr. Maybe talk about Mr. Rescue. Remember that? He said he's the guy out there with his couple of daughters and stuff. He gave the description that it's a teenager. And when he's wearing that big white shirt or something, don't hold me that, but you know, in this case we had descriptions given of a white shirt, a black shirt, a K-part hoodie, a black hoodie, and as far as the pants, we've been told there's black pants, there are jeans, there are cargo pants, and there are camouflage pants. And you're going to see this from the different witnesses that go on and so forth like that. Mr. Rescue tells me what's the teenagers. Does this guy look like a teenager? I know we're talking about a year and a half ago. It's not a teenager, it's 6'1" something. Now, back in this time. If you remember when we were talking about jurors and eyewitness testimony, I asked you folks if you thought that education some sort of knowledge would make you a better eyewitness or something. The reason I say that, she's a very educated lady. I think she's a librarian. I don't remember if she's a PhD or a master's degree or whatever. And so they're going to try to get a lot of mileage out of her. Well, you know, she's got nothing but dog in the show. But you know what? Let me tell you this. You heard Mr. Daly indicate that Penny is black. When she first gave her first statement, she said that the dog was white. It was a white dog. That's how off she is. Her husband, who's right with her, Doug's side, you also heard his name. He never even saw the face of the individual. I mean, they're right there together. So on one hand, they're trying to make their witness sound like they know about it, so well, they have interaction, and they talk, and they smile, and they wave. So, you know, put some credence in it. How much credence do you put in somebody that tells you that a black dog is white? In addition to which, is a description that doesn't fit. But then when she does give another description, which fits, you know what happens? That's what, so she's honest enough to say, I saw this picture and that looks like it. And that's enough. Forget everything else that I said when it was fresh in my mind, when I brought it to you, forget all that. The guy on the news. That's the kind of so-called witnesses they had. They had witnesses that saw anything. There's no witness that knew April Millsap and that knew Mr. James VanCallis. There are some witnesses that come forth that are going to say, this April, we know her, we know she walks the dog, we saw her walk by. It's a small town. There's absolutely no problem there. And they will say we saw her with some guy or so. There's actually not any witness that says that was James VanCallis, that I know him. They're going to say, well, that looks like him, that's the guy I think I saw on TV. Same with the motorcycle. You know, they tell you it's a narrow, which is a blank between two things, but you're going to have people tell you it's a big bike, it's a small bike, it's a black bike, black bike, it's a white bike, and in reality it's a blue and white bike, which they've had right from day on. The tires on it, not one speck of dirt from the field or the leaves from where people's bodies found or from the trail. Not one speck. They've still got that bike. They've still got that helmet. They've still got everything. So you need to think about that as well. This guy's an angel. Maybe he doesn't live the life that you or I would want. So, but ladies and gentlemen, all I'm asking you to do is keep your mind open. Just go through a list of some of the things that I have in mind that they're not going to be able to show you. And if you just listen, I think we'll be okay. As I indicated, and as Mr. Daly has also said, there is not one fingerprint that identifies James as having any action with any kind of touch, any kind of connection with April. There's no DNA. There's no actual eyewitness to the so-called event at the time, which is horrible. There's no relationship connection. That's all been checked. That phone number that I told you about that was called 3 times between 6:30 and 6:31 doesn't go to him. But I'm really surprised myself. I was shocked when I asked that guy and he said he didn't know who it was. I mean, maybe when he testifies later today or tomorrow, maybe things have changed. And for the time that this case has been going on, I'll call it from time to time, and I can't remember if it says it's not a non-functioning number or something. But anyway, so obviously it seems to me that she was trying to call somebody, whoever that she was supposed to meet. The helmet, nothing on it. The clothes, nothing on it. The motorcycle, nothing on it. All clean. Now, as far as April's body, when she comes to the morgue and we look at her fingernails and stuff, she's got some leaves and her hand's kind of closed, the left hand. And the right hand is kind of down, you know, like this. Look at it, and nails, at least to the visual eye, they seem fine. You'll be able to see them. So if there's any kind of struggle or anything, wouldn't you think if somebody's in that situation, they would have struggled if you know, unless she was made deceased first and then whatever was happening. I will tell you this though, that in the autopsy report, the examiner does indicate, and she's going to testify, that I believe on the left hand she finds they're all intact. You know, some are shorter than others, but there's no problem. One of the nails, she thinks that because there's some sort of line, that it could be indicative of some sort of, you know, something happening, and one seems like it has a crack in it. So I certainly don't want to mislead you. It's nothing like, you know, if there's nails missing, or if you wore long nails and now all of a sudden a cut or bolt or something underneath, they looked and all of that. Absolutely nothing. So there's nothing to connect other than these black, white witnesses. You know, this is black, that's white, this is yellow, this is this. We even have a witness, and you'll hear about this, that indicates that the person was wearing shorts. And they say that twice, you know, that, oh yeah, I was wearing shorts because I saw the legs and stuff, so that's why I didn't know what color shirt it was. That's the kind of sketchy stuff that they have. As I indicated, about 1,000 tips have come in, not one of them ties in with this channel. Lots about gray vans and other things. Let me take you back to that 6:28 p.m. text. You know, we're not teenagers. I know they had their own way of thinking and stuff, but just think about this for a minute. If you were on a trail at about 6:30, 7 o'clock, July 24, 2014, and you saw somebody or something approaching you, what would make you say, I think I'm about to be kidnapped, OMFG? I don't think it would be some one guy on a little bike. It's like a Enduro or whatever they call it, a little small bike. I think that would be more consistent if somebody with a pickup or somebody with, I would think. I mean, if, you know, that's common logic. I'm not saying that I know the answer to that. But it seems much more consistent to me that if you thought that you were being followed or you were being preyed upon by somebody in a vehicle, that you would be more likely to think that you've been kidnapped than on a motorcycle. How many motorcycle kidnappings do you think about? Especially, everybody's going to admit it's not the world's biggest fight. It's not one of those Harleys with a sidecar and stuff where you could kidnap somebody. Another important thing about the shoes. This is really interesting. You heard Mr. Daly, he's a prosecutor, he's doing his job, God bless him. Came up here and he said, okay, we send the shoes to the Michigan State Lab and stuff, you know? Did he ever tell you what the results are? No. What did he say? We want you to make a decision. We don't want to cloud your mind with results or anything like that. That's very generous, because you know why? Their own specialists, after looking at the shoes, taking his or her time, and analyzing with everything stated, are excluded them over 80%. The tread marks of shoes that are similar to the ones that they're alleging. Remember now, my client had K-Swift shoes, which he turned over to the police, which they still have. Third or fourth interview, Crystal comes up with this cockamamie story, despite the fact that she's right. Oh, no, the shoes are good, you weren't the ones. So they go on this wild goose chase. They look at the pattern, they go backwards. They don't take somebody's shoes and match them to injuries. They look at the injuries, they blow them up, they have the pictures and hats. They go to specialists and say, what kind of shoes could have made these injuries? And as you know from watching TV again, perhaps, that there is a significant database out there of patterns, you know, V's and other things like that, herringbone patterns and so forth, so they narrow it down to the kind of shoes. Those shoes are no longer made. So what do? They go out, if I remember correctly, they go out and get 9.5 size shoes. That's the closest they can find. Try to match, doesn't match. Then later, and I'm sure they'll probably be shown to you, then they go out and get them in the right size, but then they get a different color stuff of what they're saying. So they're going to try to tell you, these are the shoes. But that's done backwards. That's not a match from that to somebody's. This is looking at this and saying, okay, how can we get shoes to match this? They're not presenting any shoes that did any of this. And Crystal is a different kind of young lady, you know. I mean, I'm not going to say anything to bash her or to demean her in any way when she's here to listen for testimony. Some of the things she says are pretty impressive. If you're sitting right there, you really think that this SOB just walked into your house where you live with 2 kids and he has just killed somebody, and he said, baby, stick on me, we're in this together. And he's giving the wrong shoes to the police. You think I'm going to just stay quiet and not say anything? Just relax and everything's fine and stuff until finally the police tell you, Crystal, who's going to watch your kids? And then all of a sudden, anything, whatever you want me to say, I will say. And then she starts saying all kinds of other things. Which are not relevant here, but I mean, like I told you, it's like a 4 or 5 hour CD, you know? But the third one was on the where she sings these things. So again, you need to take that with a grain of salt as well. It doesn't make any sense. Now, I think that they mentioned something about motivation, which, true to the law, they don't have to ever explain to you any kind of motivation. Of course, you've got to come up with something. These 2 people go to each other. They've had a year and a half of state-of-the-art law enforcement technology and personnel to try to come up with a connection, especially in this digital age. We leave footprints all over the place. Absolutely nothing. So they come up with a story that Mr. VanCallis goes to the marathon. He needs to go, he turns to the right to exit, and I think that's Main Street. All of a sudden, supposedly in his rear view mirror, somehow he sees April and says, wow, she's hot. I want to get to her. So, excuse me, I'm just trying to tell you what they're trying to say. So he turns his bike around and follows up and chases. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, when these people testify, you will see the pictures, and when chief testifies or anybody else is familiar with it, at Marathon gas station, there's a no left turn sign. So anybody that wants to go right has to, by its nature, go to the right. And you'll see the video of the Marathon. You notice they didn't mention anything. Remember that? They talked about the video of the motorcycle at the Cost House? When they got out, they said this guy that has a young child and has a motorcycle and so on and so forth like that. I don't think you remember them saying a single thing about a Marathon gas station. That's the one that shows where Mr. VanCallis was like this. Sees the low left turn sign, which I don't think anybody's going to dispute. If they do, we'll bring in pictures. Not a problem. Around and even let us go.
My objection is there doesn't be no testimony. That tape isn't even coming in unless he introduces it, so I don't know where he's getting the testimony. He can't make assumptions about what we're going to say.
Excuse me.
To prove something.
Excuse me.
Yes, John.
When I talk, you stop. That's how it works in this court, always. I don't know that he's not going to introduce the tape.
But the damage is done by him saying it.
Don't get smart with me.
I'm telling you right now that testimony's not coming in. He shouldn't be allowed to say it.
You got some way you're bringing this testimony in?
I've got the tape, Your Honor. I got it from them.
Correct.
Please. Are you somehow introducing it where you're going to get it into evidence lawfully?
I think so.
Then how are you going to get the identification of your client on that right? And we're making that claim.
I'm not. I'm going to show you that little picture.
What about the judge? Objections are made to the judge. The judge rules on the objection, and you speak to me.
And I'm indicating to you that there's
no...
I'm indicating to you there will be no witness that's going to come on the stand from our side and indicate that's Mr. VanCallis on the motorcycle so that he can make this argument about making this left-hand turn.
Your Honor, as you know, we submitted a witness list. We have 34 witnesses. Mr. Fellow can possibly know each and every one of them are testifies.
Juries to be instructed that the attorney's openings are not evidence, and you may proceed.
I will move on. They should speak for themselves. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the part that is not in dispute in this case is the April 9th It's battling over somebody's intention to do even worse. The biggest injustice that can occur is to let the actual culprit go free and to convict an innocent man. I'm hoping that you can at least keep your mind open and listen to these things that I talked about and see this potentially not as time moves on. And ultimately, find my client not guilty of the charges against him. Then, before I pass, may I consult my client briefly? Thank you for your time. I'm sorry that I was contentious.
Folks need a break? Anybody need a break? Speak now. We're going to start with the first witness. Who's your first witness?